different feelings, right? This might be old number.
The old.
10.4. So these are 20 feelings or 20 emotions that people feel, which are representations of Bhagwanji, right? So he is, whenever we experience these in anybody, we should understand that these are Bhagwanji expressing himself. Okay. Now, interesting thing about these 20 feelings is that 4 are in pairs. So there is a feeling and then there is a contrary feeling. So 4 of these are pairs. Both the positive and the seemingly negative feeling, they are both expressions of Bhagwanji, right? So 4 twos are 8. The rest 12 are only one-sided feelings. Only those are Bhagwanji's expression. The negative of these 12 qualities are not Bhagwanji's expressions. They arise from ignorance. Okay, they arise from lack of being connected to him. So this is an important distinction to understand. Otherwise, any kind of feeling that comes up, then you start to say, oh, this is Bhagwanji only operating through me. You have to realize at what point of time we are operating through yoga with him, and when we have gone out of yoga, and hence we are creating different types of feelings which are not representation of him, which are not an expression of him. Okay. With that understanding, now we'll start reading.
So I'll just add one thing, right? The whole Bhakti Yoga, this section that is there, entire purpose is to move from gross to subtle. And in this chapter, we're reaching that stage where Bhagwanji is now talking about the subtle within us. Right? Yes, we can be attached to body, we can be attached to relationships, we can be attached to sansar, but the thing we are most attached to are our personalities. I am so cool because I have this. I am so cool because I'm kind. I am much better than you because I can forgive you. Right? And in this, when we read these qualities, as when we reflect on ourselves, the very first thing to reflect upon us is these qualities are not ours. They're God's sprinkle vibhuti in all of us. It is manifested differently for each one, and that's because of our limitations, right? But all of us have these vibhutis, and all of these qualities sits in potential energy in all of us, right? That's when we do antakaranti cleaning for us to be able to reflect this positive energy. Second thing is, this is uh, the second thing is, when we see other people, right? And when we see these qualities manifest in other people. Narayan, please come in, please come in.
Continue.
No, there should be space. Nandini, you can sit up here if you want. You'll just be easier.
Or here.
Or here, wherever you'd like. Wherever you'd like.
Narayan. So when we see these emotions or feelings being expressed in others, then we have to understand this is his expression, right? And we connect to others through that. So these are all, so as we had said, he's going to express vibhutis to us. These are expressions of him, which are going to be the best in each class, right? And why is he expressing the best in each class to us? Is because of our limitation, our intellect, which is at a very gross level. And so we need to connect to the best in each class to be able to really to be impressed enough, right? That's why he's telling us the best in each class. Okay, so this is 10.4. We'll start reading 10.4. Okay. Who wants to go out? We'll start. Anu, with me. बुद्धिर्ज्ञान सम्मोहः. Actually, remember we used to do this with everyone, no? Reading. We'll do it like that. So, forgot. See the format. We'll all read together. So I'll say, and then everybody reads together. Okay. Forgot. Okay. बुद्धिर्ज्ञानसम्मोहः
बुद्धिर्ज्ञानसम्मोहः
क्षमा सत्यं दमः शमा
क्षमा सत्यं दमः शमः
सुखं दुःखं भवो भावः
सुखं दुःखं भवो भावः
भयं चाभयमेव च.
भयं च भयमेव च.
So these are all different
Read that.
emotions, and we'll so I won't take the meaning because it's very easy. Okay. Ahimsa samata tushtihi
अहिंसा समदुष्टिः
tapodanam yasho yashah
तपोदानं यशो यशः
bhavanti bhavabhutanam
भवन्ति भावभूताः
मत्त एव पृथक् विधः.
मत्त एव पृथग्विधः.
So I won't take you through the meanings, they are very simple.
Maybe, but not everyone knows Hindi, right? So I think we should go first.
Okay. So buddhi is intellect, gyan is wisdom, sammoha is asammoha is non-delusion, kshama is forgiveness, satyam is truth, dam is control over senses, control over body, shama is control over mind, sukham and dukkham is happiness and unhappiness, bhavo bhavaha, bhava is to be and abhava to not be. So you can think of this as creation and destruction or birth and death. Bhayam is fear. Fear is fearlessness. Ahimsa is non-violence. Samta, equanimity. Tushti is contentness. Tapa is austerity. Danam, charity. Yash is fame, and ayash is infamy. So even though they look very different, but they all arise from him. He is the mool karan. He is the causal. He's basically the cause. I guess that's what is being said.
One more line.
Yeah, he's just saying these are all different types of bhav in all beings,
Okay.
which are because of it. Prathak vidha is different. Yeah. Exactly.
Intellect, wisdom, non-delusion, forgiveness, truth, self-restraint, calmness, happiness and unhappiness, birth and death, fear and fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, contentment, austerity, charity, fame and infamy. All these different feelings in beings arise only from being. Different feelings of being arise from the Lord. The different words which have been used to denote these feelings are explained below.
So just one before we read the first one. These vibhutis and these divine qualities exist at the bhav level. These are not physical beings or things and characteristics in us. It's the way, it's the bhav with which we conduct a particular activity. And as mentioned earlier, all of us have all of these qualities. And all of it sits in potential energy. Depending on our innate personality, our past life impressions, certain ones come to the forefront. Right? Because that's what we need to experience in this life. And that's the karmic journey we need to go through. But eventually, when we go through this round and round and round of Gita to do the cleansing, we will be fully reflective of all 20 of these qualities. Because they're all sitting in potential energy in all of us.
First, intellect. This is the determinative faculty in a human being. It enables a person to discriminate between the propriety or otherwise of actions, good or bad deeds, duty and non-duty.
So this is something we talked about earlier, right? This is the faculty that distinguishes us from animals. And there is a reason why that is given as the very first faculty. The reason why we sit in this satsang and read the book and collect knowledge is to sharpen that intellect, to direct that intellect, right? And its main purpose is to help discriminate between what is proper, what are the good deeds, and what are the bad deeds. That's the main purpose and the only purpose of our intellect.
There's one more piece, right? So intellect allows you to see beyond what is apparent. So for example, you have food, right? Your tongue will always, so there's a law of nature that like attracts like, right? We hear of it as birds of a feather flock together and all, right? So in Hindi, it's called jatiya bhed. If you are in the same jati, there is akarshan, there is attraction between what is the same, right? So this body, as an example, belongs to the sansar. So there is akarshan between body and the senses and this world, right? There is akarshan between our soul and Bhagwanji because they are in the same jati. They are like. Okay, so that's the concept. So each of our senses are attracted to their objects, right? So nose will be attracted to to good smells, etc. So things like that, right? Now here, so for example, your tongue is going to be attracted to good fried food, for example, right? It is the intellect that will come in and say that this is not good for you. So what is not apparent to your senses is going to be determined by and it is visible to the intellect. That is the difference between the two. So intellect will always go beyond what is apparent to the sense organs.
Second, wisdom. This faculty enables a person to have correct cognition of different things and entities.
So, wisdom is what you collect using your intellect and having an experience. You have an experience, you use the intellect correctly, it merges together and it represents as wisdom. Right? And wisdom can be collected from your direct experience or from other people's experience. That would purely be defined by how sharp your intellect is, whether you can collect the wisdom in that situation. But again, it's no coincidence that this is the order that he's going in. First, Vibhuti is intellect, then the wisdom that you collect using the intellect correctly, and then the rest will manifest.
And the specific type of wisdom that is being referred to here is the ultimate wisdom, the ultimate gyan to know what is the truth and what is not the truth, what is the essence and what is unreal. That is the specific type of highest pinnacle of wisdom that we are talking of here, which is his representation.
Third, non-delusion. Delusion is a frame of mind in which a thing appears to be what it is not. As a result of this error, what is bad appears to be good, what is immoral appears to be right. Absence of this frame of mind is non-delusion.
So again, purpose of intellect and wisdom is to help you decipher between what is real and what is not real. Right? This is where non-delusion comes. And in our society, we very easily partake in the non-delusion as long as everybody else is partaking in it. Some log bribe de rahe, I'll also happily give a bribe and get my way, right? And I'll justify it in one to many different ways, right? So this is where your intellect, your wisdom comes in for you to identify where you want to land, where you want to.
What is the biggest delusion in the world? The biggest delusion is that this world is a source of happiness. That I will get my happiness from this world. That is the biggest delusion. So the non-delusion is to know that my happiness does not come from this world, it comes from within. And as Abhinav said, there's a reason why you have everything in this order, right? So with these three vibhutis in place, now we are ready to engage with the world. With the right intellect that is turned towards Bhagwanji, that reflects Bhagwanji and his knowledge, the wisdom that acquires from it, the experiential knowledge that we know of what is the truth, and then having a complete being sthir in that wisdom and being non-deluded about where true happiness lies. Satchit Anand is not in this world. So running after this world is not going to get us that Satchit Anand, which we are always seeking. Now we are ready to engage with the world.
Forgiveness. It is the quality which restrains a person from being vindictive, even though being in position to avenge.
So forgiveness is a very interesting one, right? Firstly, because all of us have the ability to forgive, but most of us don't know how to do it. And that's explained in the second part of this. Like, because we tend to want to avenge, we tend to want to blame, we tend to want to point fingers, right? If I'm hurting, I want the other person to hurt too, right? If I've been wronged, I want to do the wrong to the other person too. So, but forgiveness is one of the first qualities coming after the intellect, because for us to get rid of our prarabdha, for us to reduce our karmic debt, this becomes one of the most important tools for us to know that whatever anyone is doing to us or circumstances happening to us, it's him that is doing it for our benefit, not against us. Right? And forgiveness is something, it's a divine quality that all of us have. But I find it fascinating that in society, no one talks about how to forgive. And that's a very personal, we teach children to say sorry when they make a mistake. But we don't, there are no words to teach a child how to forgive. That means you're just blocking it, blocking it, blocking it. And that's, I think, one of the first divine qualities for all of us to become aware of implementing in situations. And it reflects differently in all of us.
Another important thing is that forgiveness, as with everything else, starts internally, right? The entire world is inside of us first. The first thing we need to do is to learn to forgive ourselves, right? And that's very difficult. We don't forgive ourselves. Like we are very tough taskmasters on ourselves when we talk internally to us, right? We talk down on ourselves. We get upset with ourselves. Forgiveness starts. Charity starts at home. So first level is to forgive ourselves for what we did or did not do, or who we were, or the choices we made when we were little children and we did not know any better, right? And most of us tend to not be able to forgive ourselves, that little child who made certain decisions in that life, right? And that then tends to define who we are. So first, forgiveness for ourselves. Second, forgiveness for everyone else around us. Why is that important? Because when we forgive someone else, we are actually forgiving ourselves first. When we don't forgive others, why is this so high in the list of duties? When we don't forgive others, we create blocks of energy inside ourselves. Or we hear of so many diseases today, like cancer, right? Cancer is what? Cancer is basically knots inside your body. Tumors are knots inside our body. These knots are created because energy stops to flow. If you're very angry with someone, you're upset with someone, you don't forgive somebody for something that they did long time ago, it creates knots inside of us and creates cancers.
Another example that we've always shared in our Saturday class is you think in your mind, you feel in your heart.
Yes.
When you and the thoughts you're thinking, your feelings are directly correspondent in your heart. You're not able to forgive. That's the number one reason blockages happen in the heart, which results to all these diseases, etc. Because you're creating those blockages. You're not being able to let go of negativity inside of you. Right? So the first divine quality actually is to tap into forgiveness and let go of it, because that's when you're letting go of your karma.
Correct.
Otherwise, you're collecting the karma inside.
Actually, it is very interesting because yoga therapy is a concept for us, like how most of the disease and disorders is kosha, which is the mind. Um, yeah,
Sorry, you're saying.
yeah, and just like like in yoga therapy, this is the concept. How all the disease and disorders, 85% of disease and disorders start from a monomaya kosha, which is the mind. So all the idiopathic disease there is no reason. Example, cancer, BP, diabetes, all those diseases start from the emotions, unresolved emotions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But then it is equally difficult to kind of, as you said, how people don't know how to forgive, right? It's again, saying sorry is one thing, but to get into that process of completely forgiving is also,
Yeah.
it's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one, and also like what yoga says in that area is like see, our mind is again everything stimulation and relaxation. We keep on stimulating ourselves, but forget to relax. Right? Once the mind and body everything is getting relaxed, that is when we get more awareness of like what all we are storing and holding in the heart. Then we can slowly release.
Meditation, meditation is
Meditation and also deep relaxation. Not how to relax ourselves. Relax completely, let go and relax. That makes it more kind of easier to let go of certain emotions.
But before you let go, don't you need to detach yourself a lot? Like you have to detach yourself from that person for some time before you can drop that. Like immediately, it's very difficult to forgive certain situation or certain someone. It's just you need to move out and detach, and then at that stage when the person stops meaning so much or being so much important, then I think it's much easier to use the other tools to
So,
then stop it.
so let me clarify, right? So forgiveness, I think, has a couple of stages. The very first stage is not taking it personally, not feeling bad about a situation. It's not happening to you. It's not you. It's not that ego. That first stage is you disconnecting from your ego. You say, this is not about me. It's not about him doing it to me personally. If someone has behaved a certain way which is unfavorable, then the second stage, once you disconnect from ego and not take it personally, you will invoke empathy. That, oh, this person is probably going through a very bad day. Oh, this person is probably feeling extremely frustrated, not got a chance to vent out to anyone, so he's venting out. So now you're creating a space where you're empathizing with the person to understand their worldview, and that furthers your detachment to your ego, not to the person. The person is still Bhagwanji. And the third stage is, can I express love and compassion to this person for his journey? And if I cannot reach that stage, and if I fall down in the negative cycle, then we've talked about this earlier, that's a kusang for you. That is someone you're not, that's the opposite of satsang. This is a satsang. Kusang is somebody you interact with, a situation you interact with, you walk away, you still feel that negativity, right? But then that person is a kusang for you. Nothing is wrong with that person. Nothing is wrong with that circumstance. It is your inability to deal with it because your ego gets triggered. Your attachment is your ego. And your detachment needs to be with your ego, not with people, not with samsara from that perspective.
And important to realize that that person or that situation, that VVGP has come into our lives to show us something about ourselves. And what is it? It is that it's like attracts like.
It's
If you
exactly
attracted a situation or a person or a feeling or a situation which is causing something inside of you, it's because that thing exists inside of you and you attracted it. And now it is triggering exactly that thing inside of you. So you need to go in and clean that aspect inside of you that you are upset about outside of you. It exists inside of you, and that is why it is getting triggered. It is not that person, it is you. Once you clean it inside of you, once you completely like unmulan, you take it out with roots so that it never grows again. Unmulan agar aap kar doge apne andar se, after that it will, that situation, that VVGP will completely remove itself from your life because you're not, there's no more jatiyata, there is no more attraction. We attract things. That is why in the initial starting of the class, I said there is jatiyata, akarshan, like attracts like in this book. That's very important. It's a law of nature. And real forgiveness.
okay, your tissues are behind.
Here,
You want what I get?
just get some.
It's right, it's kept there. Huh?
So, and real forgiveness is when we can forgive people and can ask, like from inside of you, you do not just ask for something bad to happen to them, but you actually actively ask for something good to happen to them. So you have to seek blessings for them. That is real forgiveness.
You know,
Because then you have empathized with that person enough to know what he must be going through to be able to get so worked up. And then you send them good vibes. If that's a real forgiveness. When you can seek blessings, you can ask for blessings for them. And try this anytime, right? So I've done this exercise a lot with my sister, and she reports back to me. So she's had cases of very difficult people in her life, her bosses, etc. And this is provably what she's told me every time, that before any such meeting, I should tell her, like, do a forgiveness exercise for them, send good vibes to them. So she would meditate before each of those supposedly stressful meetings. And she always came out saying, oh, I had a really good interaction with her this time. She was much more calm. She listened to me. We had a good conversation. It really, really works. Right now, the way the cleaner we are in our antakaran, the better we will invoke other people. Okay, we create people in our lives. We create people. There is no uh, there is no absolute. There's only one absolute in this world. There's one absolute truth. That is him. After that, everything else is mithya. Right? So who Abhinav is, there is no one Abhinav in this world. There is an Abhinav that is created in my relationship with him. There is one Abhinav that gets created in relation to Anmol, right? It is a very different Abhinav that shows up in every different situation. And that is why it is up to us on what we want to create with other people. We create them through our language, through our tone, whether we understand that power or not. Most times we don't understand that power. We don't accept it because it's too much responsibility, right? Power comes with responsibility, and it's too much responsibility for most of us to bear. Easy to let it go and blame other people, other world, and say it's not because of me. It's very difficult to accept it's because of me, right? Oh my God, too much of work then, right? Tap. It leads to tap. Too much tap is required. And we don't want to do that. So when we start to go down that conversation, we start to realize what is causing us to create things in our lives and how to improve that situation, how to take the power back in our hands. Go to the next one, please.
So the last thing about forgiveness, which Nina and I were discussing last night, very early this morning. Um, the second part of the statement, right? It is a quality which restrains a person from being vindictive, even though being in a position to
Oh, yeah,
avenge.
yeah.
That is very important. This quality needs to emerge the most when you are in a position of power, not when you're in a position of weakness.
Yeah, but that's true for everything, right? Now, in this specific context, right, there is this poem by Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, where he says, क्षमा शोभती उस भुजंग को जिसके पास गरल हो उसको क्या जो दंतहीन विषहीन विनीत सरल हो, right? So kshama can, if you are in a position to harm someone and then you don't do it, that is real forgiveness. Not when you actually have no power, right? You have no power to hurt, and then you say, hey, I forgave you. Really, it means nothing. It means nothing. So real forgiveness comes out when you have the power to do something and you choose to not exercise that power. Okay.
Which is why Gandhi used to have a quote, a very famous one. Forgiveness is the attribute of a strong man.
A strong man. Yeah. Not a weakness. It's not a sign of weakness. And having said that, we always have power. We always have power, and most importantly, who's the satta inside of ourselves? There's only one satta, ourselves. So when we forgive someone else, we forgive ourselves first. The person who gets hurt the most when we are angry or when we don't forgive is ourselves alone. And this is where your intellect needs to come in. The intellect will tell you when those emotions are raging crazy. You do some writing, think about it, get your intellect to see what's the first person I'm hurting is myself. Yes. And use that intellect to break the cycle of emotions. Everything in this world has a life cycle of its own. It has its own genesis, and then it has the need to perpetuate itself because it all comes from Bhagwanji. Bhagwanji is eternal. There is no death there, right? So we are all always seeking that eternalness, right? We all want to escape death. We are all fearful of death. And that's true not just for conscious beings, it is true for everything, including feelings. So if an anger comes in, it will want to do everything to perpetuate itself. And it will do so by trying to instill anger in others. So if there's anger in me, I will make sure that I do things around me so that I get angry. All of you leave agitated. All of you will feel agitated, angry in various amounts, depending on your own antakaran. Right? Some will get more impacted. People who do not have control over their antakaran, they tend to get easily swept up by their external circumstances. Others who have better control will be able to examine and put aside and say that, oh, this was transference from this person, and are able to then put it aside. They will feel it, but they're able to put it aside by being able to examine themselves because there is that gap between an external stimuli versus their reaction.
Truth. To describe a fact only in sweet words for the welfare of the listener and for the purpose of and with the intention of making sincere clarification constitutes truth.
So here you should underline all of these little aspects, right? So the first is describe a fact only.
These are called the gates. I think what Abhinav is saying, why it is important is because we all hide in the concept of truth now to hurt people a lot. You, sachi to hai. I have to tell the truth. What do you mean? I will, if I don't tell the truth, we hide behind the concept of truth to become vengeful and to hurt other people a lot. These are the 5 gates of truth. Before you
5 gates
speak,
of speech.
the 5 gates of speech that your speech must cross through for it to be considered truth and something that you can actually speak.
So we'll discuss this in chapter 12. It's called Vani Katha. This shloka also, this is also. So the very first aspect is its fact only. We tend to exaggerate things and we tend to build words and stories based on our biases.
So it no longer you can separate opinion from the fact. Very often we take our opinion and consider that as a fact. Right?
Adding adjectives, adding verbs, adding things where you don't need. The second is in sweet words, which means whatever you need to say, can you say it in sweet words? And if you cannot say it in sweet words, then maybe don't say it.
So the first gate, the first gate is the fact.
Toughest to implement with your spouse, I must say.
So the first one is that it should be a fact. The second gate is why do you want to tell that? Right? Is it for their welfare, or are you trying to find cavalry in something, right? Fault finding. Buddhi kahan hai hamari? Are we in that fault finding mode? Then you've already failed them, right? If not, if you're only speaking for the welfare of the other person, you think it will help them. That's the second gate. Then comes the third gate is how will you say it?
No.
That's the sweet. That's the sweetness.
That's the sweetness.
Yeah.
The third
How
is
you say it.
what I am saying. Is it for the benefit of the other person?
So I just said welfare, no?
Welfare of the other person.
That's Vedant.
Yeah, take care of it.
You would have gone inside and there's a lot of. Okay. So the third thing is, so then how do you say it and where do you say it? Okay, so this is like partially covering that whole Vani Katha, which we will cover in chapter 12. But basically, how we say it, who we say it, at what point of time do we say it, all of these things are important. So just because you think you have a fact doesn't make it necessary that where it may not be appropriate for you to say. Okay. And then why are you asking something? It must be for the purpose of either, like, when you say a truth or whatever, like, it has to be for the purpose of clarification. So, right, if Bhagwanji has talked all through this whole thing, that ask questions, but not with an idea of fault finding. Ask sincere questions with the idea of seeking clarity. Know that this is the truth, right? Last class we understood that this is a Purushaya Gyan. No human being has written it. It has come directly from him. He has spoken it, and somebody has tried to write it down, which means that whatever we are reading, even there, like, it just comes from the purest source, right? So don't doubt it. When you're unable to implement it in your life, then ask, why am I unable to implement it? Why am I not getting the results? There is something not right with the way we are implementing it. Yeah? That's the truth.
Self-restraint. Turning the senses away from their objects is self-restraint.
And the next one.
Calmness. To keep the mind free from disturbances leads to calmness.
These two, Dam and Sham, right? They form the basis of everything. There is something called Shakta Sampatti. Okay? Shakta Sampatti, six Sampattis, right? The first is Dam, control over our senses. Second is Sham, control over our mind. Third is Upreti, control over our actions, restraint of actions. It basically means quietness, right? Something actually quietness, not just control. Control for what? Quieten them down. So Dhamma really means control, quietness of senses. Sham means quietness of mind, which will come from control. The third is, now when you have these two under control and you are now acting in the world, the third Shat Sampatti is Upreti, which is quietness of actions. Right? You take actions out. That means you take karma out. Right? That does not mean कि आप kriya nahi कर रहे. You will still do kriya. The difference between kriya and karma is whether you accrue the phal or not. Right? So that's the third one. Quietness of actions. Upreti. The fourth Shat Sampatti is quietness of Titiksha, quietness of pain. Quietness of pain, endurance, Titiksha. The fifth Sampatti is Shraddha, quietness of Aham. And the last one is Samadhan, quietness of restlessness. So this Shat Sampatti is important for us to develop. But as Karma Yogis, the very first thing that we have to do is Dam and Sham, which is why it has been put down here. Without Dam and Sham being in place, there is no way we need to start to think about Karma Yogi. For Karma Yogi, Dam and Sham are super important. And then we'll get to the next level. Sense control and mind control. Otherwise, there's no way that you can. This is what creates discipline in the first place. You cannot get to any goal in this world without that discipline. Correct? And then you will get to the point of when you start becoming a karma yoga, that there is a quietness of action that starts to come through. Because your karma starts to become a karma. Right? That's your third one. And from there, then we have to practice the diksha. Develop endurance of pain. First, to start with physical pain. Can you actually sit down and do meditation for 4 hours? Can you go through the pain or that whatever mental, physical pain to get to a goal? Endurance, right? Endurance is required to get to any goal, physical, mental, emotional, whatever. And eventually, the highest goal to realize Bhagwanji. You need titiksha, right? And then eventually you have to get to the point of being able to, once your aham, then comes aham. Only after you've gone to all these levels can you start to understand how to control ego, how to quieten your ego down.
Happiness. The feeling of one or more circumstances being favorable causes happiness.
The next one.
Unhappiness. The feeling of one or more circumstances being unfavorable causes unhappiness.
So the question is this, right? How can unhappiness, we're talking about divine qualities, right? How can unhappiness be a divine quality? Happiness is understandable, but how is unhappiness a divine quality?
Because it teaches you some lessons. It wants to teach you some situation, how to accept the situation, get over it, and still be happy with the. Because it is also a vibhuti, right? So it is also coming because it wants to teach you something. There's, as you guys always say, there is either learning or there is blessing. Possibly.
Perfect. That's exactly what it is. These experiences are all divine experiences because that is what will chart the direction of our life and how we choose to move forward. And so there are four pairs, a set of opposites, and we'll discuss all of them. And this is the first of those four pairs. So, yeah. So when an unhappiness situation comes and you feel unhappiness, that's also Bhagwanji.
Yes.
That is also Bhagwanji. So you can take a step back and say, hey, what's the purpose here? What am I doing? What do I need to rethink here? Right?
If you didn't have this feeling, or pain is one such example of unhappiness. Pain, if we didn't have pain, we would all disintegrate. Okay? The reason you don't come and stand in front of a truck is because if that truck hits you, you're going to have massive pain. To avoid that, this is not something I want to do. You won't have somebody jumping out the window because it is painful. It creates unhappy situations. So unhappiness in its various forms helps to keep an organism together because there is this immediate feeling of wanting to preserve yourself. And it keeps communities together. So it's a cohesive force. It's a negative force, but it is a cohesive force. It is what helps to keep an organism together. It helps to keep communities together. It helps to keep systems together. That is why it's a divine quality. It is meant to be, to make sure that we don't do things that would create disintegration.
Birth. Adoption of a physical form is birth. Death. Dissolution of the physical form is death.
So again, interesting choice of words, right? Adoption and dissolution of physical form, which necessarily highlights that there is a soul, there is that capital S self that adopts it and then leaves it, right? And it says that when we adopt it, we become so deluded, we think these qualities belong to us, the ones that we can manifest for ourselves. And we get attached to them, that I'm so good, that I can escape, all the same. Not realizing these are all just ways for us to connect with God. Remember Him, His grace, because of which you have experience.
And then taken to a subtler level, birth and death is taken to be or not to be, which means the whole cycle of things coming into existence and then getting out of existence, right? Whether it is feelings, the whole cycle, whether it is people, things, relationships, whatever it is, everything has a start and everything has an end. There's a reason for that. The reason is that it helps us learn and helps us understand that there is pain when you leave something, there is that happiness. So you want to get out of that cycle. Once you've gone through that experience a few times, now you want to get away from it because you start to seek eternal happiness. You start to seek Satchit Anand. Similarly, at a subtler level, bhav and abhav would mean what you have and then what you don't have. The feeling of abhav, the lack, that is also him. You get what you need in your journey. And what you lack right now, what you think you lack, is also his expression of taking care of you. Right? For example, money, right? Money has its own characteristics. Money has its own power. Money has its own life, right? It has its own behavior and being. You will get that kind of money for using in certain situations that is perfect for your life. Anything more than that can really corrupt people. We know that, right? Money and power are two things that corrupt most people. Most. It is very difficult. It's like saying, I want tornado, I want tornado, I want tornado in my life, I want tornado in my life. and then you get it and you get swept by it. It kills you, it completely annihilates you. So that is why when you get any, and this is true for any power, okay, these two are very obvious because people talk about it, but any power. That is why you do yoga, and so you know that when they talk about this, what is this power? The one that is the Shakti, the Kundalini Shakti, right? You can't just invoke it like that. You won't be able to handle that power, right? You're supposed to really um, uh, develop your mental and physical faculties to be able to handle that power first, correct?
Right, and also the chakras have to be,
Correct. Like you need to prepare yourself to be able to handle a certain particular power. Whatever is the power, you need to prepare. So a half of that is actually good. For example, memory. Be like, oh, why don't I remember all of my previous lives? That if it actually happened, it would drive us crazy, given our sense of we can't handle that much of information. We won't be able to live. So that abhav of that previous memory is actually good. How many times we try and forget stuff that has happened in this life only because it's too difficult to handle. We repress memories. It's an active behavior of our subconscious. Right? So bhav and abhav, both being and not being of something is an expression of him and him taking care of us.
Fear, the agitation of the mind caused by an apprehension of some unfavorable occurrence is fear. Fearlessness, the absence of fear is fearlessness.
So you are looking this.
It's basically the same concept, right? Fear is important. If we did not have fear, again, it's a case of unhappiness. It helps to keep cohesion in organisms and in this world. So fear is very important. Without fear, we would end up doing a lot of stuff that would cause us harm. Fear of certain outcome can cause us to behave in a certain way. Right? Now, having said that, we tend to use fear in very negative and gross ways as well. Right? The whole kind of like carrot and stick approach is one example. It's very gross level. We use fear, we instill fear in kids to get them to behave in a certain manner. When we start to use this externally, is when things start to really deteriorate and it becomes suboptimal in its use. We have to use it internally. The best form of motivation does not come from extrinsic fear or extrinsic reward. So that extrinsic carrot and stick approach does not create lasting motivation in any human being. The only time a person really lasts with something and actually creates something beyond himself would be when this fear and fearlessness are used internally. They are internally motivating factors. Fear can be a great motivating factor, huge motivating factor to get some stuff done. And we all have experienced it. That's a great form of fear. Right? As with everything else, if we don't use it correctly, it's like a tool. It can easily, we destroy lives.
So fear, there are two levels to this. One is fear emanates from this physical body, and it's very like tied to self-preservation of this body. That's a sansaric fear. That's the worldly fear. We all have experienced fire, loss of it's health, whatever it is, right? It's a fear that we constantly experience. That fear needs to actually get translated to fearlessness. Because that fear is a manifestation of attachment to something in samsara. So that fear is not what you want. The fear that you want is what we say in India, God fear.
God.
That you know this is not right for you or for the principles, and you're still doing it. It's come to your awareness. You can make the mistake over and over again, but then that fear has to kick in. I know this is wrong, yet I'm doing it.
Fear of consequences that are of higher nature.
Correct. That is where its purpose becomes truly important. But most of us, 99% of the time, will experience the sansaric fear. And that is attachment. That
No, but it is still important for cohesion. If you're not fearful of keeping yourself disease free, you will end up doing a lot of stuff that would hurt you, right? I mean, there's a place for everything that is divine. That is important to know. Now, whether we are using them correctly or not is a question to ask. There is a place for fear in this world.
The disinclination to cause any hurt or injury to another being by speech, thought, or action is non-violence.
So, non-violence, I think all of us understand it well. At action level, we understand what it is, right? And I think most of us would have extremely high control over that. Speech level, we also understand. You can hurt with words. You can make people feel little and small, or create fear in other people, right? By your aggression, by yelling. So all of that represents violence in speech. What's fascinating is at the subtlest level, he's saying at the thought level also, having violence creates prarabdha. Non-violence has to be practiced at the thought level. At the thought level, not thinking negative thoughts towards someone. And
Not
when,
just not thinking negative thoughts, but violence would also constitute if you are refraining or depriving someone of happiness, not just not hurting them. If you're depriving somebody of knowledge, if you're depriving somebody of happiness, that constitutes violence at the subtlest level.
and I'll tell you I'm in general non-violent person. But in this one aspect of my life, I'm very violent. Very violent. I can give you the example, and I'm sure most people will get to it. At the thought level, also I get violent. I have conversations like, if there is one thing, one species you can eradicate from this world, it should be mosquito. At the thought level is there, speech level is there, action level is also there. And every time I do it, I'm aware of it. But this is where
This is where Odomus comes to rescue.
so there's a story with Gandhiji, right? This in fact it's that once a book is yoga permanence,
योगानंद
right? उसकी जो autobiography है.
इसीलिए लायू में दो अच्छी तीन तीन लेकर आई हूँ वर्तमान Odomus.
Thank you. So in that book he writes about one chapter where he visits Gandhi's ashram. Okay, so he goes and visits the ashram, spends the entire day. Then it becomes evening, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, Gandhiji retires. And before he leaves, he gives a bottle of whatever to the yogi, and he says, "Look, we all practice non-violence, but unfortunately, we've not been able to train the mosquitoes to do it yet. So just apply this before you kill and get irritated and any of those things."
So it's like the nature of mosquito is to bite. Our nature is not to kill.
Exactly.
So
Perfect, right?
mosquito will bite. We cannot stop them for doing that. What we can do, we can cover yourself. Our nature is not to kill someone.
It's so beautifully said. And so horribly I implemented. I need to be better. Beautifully said. They are just doing their nature, right? They are doing their purpose. They are doing their dharma.
Yeah.
And- okay.
Equanimity. Not to lose balance of mind under any circumstance is equanimity. Contentment.
So this is equanimity is paramount to performance of karma yoga. Cannot do karma yoga without equanimity, right? In chapter 3 we had read samatvam yoga uchyate. Samta hi yoga hai. Samta is connectedness to the body.
And your karma shu kosha.
When you are in yoga, then all your actions become absolutely perfect.
And the example I'd given back then also, and I'll repeat that very same example. You could be the world's top surgeon, heart surgeon, right? And presidents, prime ministers, like all powerful people in the world comes to you to get operated. But that person will never open the spine.
on his family.
on his family, because equanimity is lost. That's the power of that's
Attachment.
yeah. So that is what Buddha said. For us to be good karma yogis, for us to do duty effectively, equanimity is the thing that creates that balance.
Contentment. The absence of the feeling of expectation or disappointment is contentment.
Contentment comes from a space of prasad buddhi. Whenever you have whatever happens, you take that as prasad, right? Whatever is coming to you, Bhagwan ji ka prasad hai, that is what causes contentment. For a lot of people, the question is, especially as a Rajasic, um, Rajasic people that we all are, the question is, oh, if I remain contented with my current situation, I will have no impetus to make any improvements in my life situation. So I will not work. Why will I work? That's actually not true, right? You will work because your work, your action is not coming because of a certain impetus in your life. It is coming because we are made of three gunas. Those three gunas will impel you to work. Okay? There is no doubt about it. You will work. Contentment is this mental space from which you come and do things. A space of happiness, a space of calmness. When mentally you are in that calm state, when you're not hankering after something to get something done, you're doing it because you're doing it as a sense of beauty. There's a situation that's happened around me. I have been given a certain job, or I find myself in a situation where I have a certain vibhuti that will allow me to act in this situation to help, right? You will be impelled to act, and you will do that act as a sense of beauty. When you're doing it as a sense of duty, there is no mental fatigue. Maximum fatigue that comes to us, physical fatigue, बहुत कम होती है. Most of us are drowned out because of mental fatigue. Because क्यों mental fatigue? Because constantly चलता रहता है ना दिमाग में. ये हुआ, वो हुआ, ऐसा वैसा, 10 situations के scenarios, and then you're working through hundreds of hypothetical situations. When you're contented, the mind is calm. And when your mind is calm, your capacity to deliver becomes several folds. Energy comes from him. If we can be contented, calm, our mind is calm, then our connection to him is strong. And so we get physical and mental and emotional and spiritual energy straight from the source, which means your ability to perform in this world will be very high. Samatma yoga uchate, and when you're in yoga, all your actions become of kushal. Kushal means perfect. They become very effective, highly effective.
Austerity. Gladly bearing an inconvenience, mental or physical, in the path of one's duty of living.
So here the operative word to underline is gladly. Gladly bearing it. Right? We all do duty. We all do our duty to the level we like to do our duty. After that, when the duty gets slightly harder
or
inconvenient, right? Then that's what is.
Yes. We go down the slippery slope very quickly.
And when we don't, that
is करेंगे, we will still do it. Action होगा. There's no stopping in the action, whether it's office, whether it's home, wherever. You will do it, but right? And that is not tough. You've done all the hard work, but you've accrued no value out of it because mentally you're doing it in the wrong way. There's no. Why is stuff important?
Yeah, it's very nice.
So why is stuff important? Actually, what is stuff?
Yeah, okay.
So what exactly is stuff? Right? Stuff is not just austerity. It actually refers to the energy that gets created, generated, or saved, and hence gets stored in your various koshas. whether it's physical body, whether it's mental body, whether it's spiritual body. Basically, there's energy that actively gets generated or gets saved, and it is stored, and that strengthens you. Okay, as an example, if there is a tap for fasting, right? We all know it strengthens the body. It is healthy for you. What does that mean? When you do tap of this is a type of tap of senses. Tap of a sense of fasting would create more space in your body to not digest. There's less energy being used by your digestive system to digest food, right? So it gives space for the body to recover. So new energy is generated in the body, and that strengthens your body. That is tap. That is tap energy. When you do the Vanika tap and you speak less, you- you're spending less energy in talking. That's conservation of energy, which will get stored inside you to be used elsewhere. These are very gross examples for you to understand. Every tap creates energy. Mental, physical, emotional tap creates energy or saves energy. And that energy is actually what is called tap. It gets stored inside us and makes us stronger. When we do bhog, every single time we do bhog, every single time we interact with the sansar, it extracts energy, it makes your body ksheen, it makes your body weaker, it makes you weaker in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally. When you do bhog, it leads to only one thing: weakening of the person, weakening of the body, weakening of your resolutions, weakening of your mind, weakening of your intellect. Bhog only leads to weakening. Yog strengthens. Tap is a form of yog. It strengthens. Okay? So remember that every time we get attracted to bhog, know that you're weakening yourself in this moment. And every time, bhog, any kind of bhog. When you are eating food for bhog versus eating food for yog, right? There's a
Bhog
difference.
is consumption,
Consumption.
for the body.
When you're
and yog-
using the world for your pleasure, that is bhog.
and
Like for
yog-
me, bhog means putting prasad, you know. So I'm wondering in that way.
Yeah.
Bhog here means consumption, consumerist. So it could be at every level. For example, you could do a bhog of a relationship when all you care about in that relationship is pleasure that you're getting from that relationship, what you're getting out of it. You've converted a relationship into bhog with that bhog mentality. Yog mentality is when you're thinking of the other person first. What can I do for the other person, right? So whether it is physical sansar or it is emotional or mental or whatever, at every level in the sansar, whenever we connect to it with the bhav of bhog, we make ourselves weaker. And yoga with this through the sansar makes us stronger. And that is the tap. That is the energy. So tap is actually the energy, not the action.
Charity. Utilization of things or money, rightfully earned or owned, for the welfare of others is charity. Fame. Dissemination of one's good qualities is fame. Infamy. Dissemination of one's bad qualities is infamy.
So this is the last of the opposites, right? The last of the qualities. Why is fame and infamy here, right? It's very interesting. So I think all of us have read this phrase, right? Man is a social animal. And we are deeply, deeply moved and affected by how people think of us. And that is ingrained in how we are as human beings, right? Like a child will do whatever it takes to please their mom and dad, right? Because their survival depends on it. And so that knowing, getting other people's approval is the basis of our survival. And that basis, Bhagwanji is saying, is a divine quality. It is a very important check mark for yourself. Because sometimes you could be deluded and you think you're doing the right thing. But when you hear back from other people who may say XYZ about you, that's a quick checkpoint. That, oh, my reputation or my name is not, this is not in line with who I think I am. That feeling is that divine divine what? interjection or intervention. Divine intervention for you to stop and think. Similarly, when people praise you, they're not praising you. They are praising the vibhutis in you, which come from Him. So don't take all the praise and say, this is because of me. Yeah, man, I'm damn good as a cook. Oh, my voice is amazing. I'm such a good singer. Nay, that's also a vibhuti Bhagwanji gave you. You did nothing for that voice. Right? And you were, so that fame as well, He makes you feel it so that you are able to be grateful for it, to be able to pay back to it.
In the first shatak, there is this part about like, how do you determine your beauty? In that beauty, there are several different things. Whether you know it. Suppose there is confusion about whether you know it or you don't know it. One of the ways to find out is what are other people going to talk about you as? What are other people thinking? What is the manyata? In certain cases, that manyata, what other people will talk about you, which is a femi piece, which helps you determine whether what you're doing is correct or not, whether it's your duty or not. In certain cases.
The human mind is a repository of all these feelings. Even though widely different from each other, they all arise by the power of the Lord. In these feelings, numbering 20 in all, 4 find place along with their contrary feelings: birth and death, fear and fearlessness, happiness and unhappiness, faith and infaith. This has a deep significance. The contrary feelings of the living well do not owe their impulsion to God, to God. They arise in the mind as a result of motivated actions of the person.
That's really important, right? That there are 4 pairs highlighted which have the positive and the negative. The others, whatever negative or opposite quality that we are aware of for them, like for charity, it is selfish motive, that does not arise from divine quality. That is not a divine quality. That is a quality that stems from our attachment to samsara and our attachment to our own ego. Okay, so that comes from us. I mean, not us, the bodies that we possess. Right? That's where it comes from.
They are negative in character. Thus, a vicious intellect, ignorance, delusion, vindictiveness, falsehood, unrestrained senses, agitation of the mind, violence, mental imbalance, discontent, laziness, and miserliness are the result of actions prompted by negative tendencies and are not part of the natural tendencies endowed by the Lord to a human being.
So if we have these qualities inside of us, we just have to be aware that this is a reflection of our ego. How can I move it to the other side? If you experience these qualities through somebody else, then you just need to be compassionate, like we talked about earlier. Empathize and then just be compassionate. Whatever the person is going through, let him go through. I just pray that he has the strength to go through. Vanchi, please give him the strength to face whatever he has to face. Does he that? Right.
The 4 tendencies coupled with their opposites should be accepted as endowments of the Lord. It is necessary to clearly discriminate between these 2 sets of qualities. Otherwise, personal faults are ascribed to the working of providence, while virtues are exhibited for personal edification. Contemplation on these qualities helps a person on the path of self-realization.
We have time for one more?
Mhm.
Yeah, we have 15 minutes.
हाँ, हाँ, 15 minutes में हो जाएगा ये.
After explaining the components of the inner nature of human beings, the Lord explains their origin.
Maharshaya Saptapurve
Saptapurve
Chatvaro Manavasthata
Chatvaro Manuvastata
Madbhava Manasa Jata
Madhava
Yesham Loka Imah Prajaha.
Yesham lokam praja.
Maharsha is Maharshis, the Mahan Rishis. Sapta is 7. Purve is preceding. Chatvaraha is the 4th, the preceding 4th. Manu, Manavastata, Manavaha is Manus, the 14 Manus. Tatha is and. Madbhava, that have come out of my feelings, my being. Manasa, from my mind. Jata is born out of. Yesham, jinki, those. Lok is this world. Ima is this, Lok is world. Prajaha, all beings, the prajas, or the beings, basically the people who live in this world.
The 7 Maharshis and the 4 preceding them, as also the Manus, sprang out of my metaphysical faculty, from whom originated all beings.
So here, in the last one, they talked about 20 feelings, right? Now we're going to talk about 25 metaphysical entities that he's going to refer to as also being, as is also coming from him. Okay. These are 25 metaphysical things are what? There are 7 Maharshis, then the 4, the Kumars, and the 14 Manus. Now, if you think about how Bhagwanji describes the creation, right? First, there was Vishnu. From his Hiranyagarbha energy came Brahma, the creative force of this nature, right? So he's the representation of Rajogun. So Vishnu is the Satogun. From his Hiranyagarbha came the creative energy Brahma. Now Brahma created with his own tap. He did a lot of tap, and with that tap he created. He was given the job of creating this universe, right? So he did a lot of tap, and from that tap emerged 4 Kumars, the Sanat Kumars, right? Sanak is the first starting point of all the names. Sanak, Sanatan, Sanak, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar, right? These 4 Kumars. The Sana, so we'll talk about all of these details, but basically they represent the highest of the highest. Okay, so they are always in connection with the Lord, right? So they did not create the progeny beyond them. And then came the 7 Maharshis. And the 7 Maharshis, they are named here as well. We will talk about them. And from them, then came the 14 Manus. If you think about one day of Brahma, we had done this, I think, in some chapter, right? 8, chapter 8. In the first couple of, in fact, in the very first shloka of chapter 8, you're right. So we describe Brahma's one day. Brahma's one day is divided up into 1000 Mahayugas. One Mahayug is the 4 yugas, right? Sato Yug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, and Kal Yug, and then back to it, right? So that's a Mahayug. 1000 of these Mahayugas make one day of Brahma. Similarly, one night of Brahma. In one Manu is equal to 17 Mahayugas, 71 Mahayugas. So basically, in one day of Brahma, which is 1000 cycles, is about 14 Manus live in that. So right now we are living through what is called the Ikshvaku Manvantar. Okay, so there are 7 more Manus that will come after this to constitute one full day of Brahma. So what is being talked about? Each of these represents some energy, right? The 7 Maharshis, for example, represent the 5 physical senses plus your intellect and mind. When you put these together, these are represented by the 7 Maharshis. These 25, the total of 25, 7 plus 4 plus 14, represent 5 elements of the Srishti Chakra. Okay? So we've read 23 of them when we had done that. So there is consciousness, Bhagwanji on top. And then from there came the 3 gunas. Under the 3 gunas came the ego, intellect, mind, and from them came the 20 sense organs and their sense of perceptions, the sense of actions, right? All of those, there were those 20, the 5 elements, their tanmatras, then 5 sense organs for intake and the 5 organs of action in this world, right? All of these 25 Srishti elements are being referred to here through these names. Okay? And the concept of Manu is important because Manu is like the Swambhuva Manu. We've heard a lot about him, right? He was the first Manu in out of these 14 Manus, Swambhuva Manu. All human beings, everything, all this entire creation comes forth from them. And Manu is what? Manu is the one who does Manan, one who is Chintansheel, right? And the word for human beings is also comes from that. So we have Manu is that entity which has two capacities. One, to do Manan, and second, to be inspired to do worship. So this is a very important characteristic of us as human beings, to be inspired to worship the Lord and to be able to do Manan, Chintan.
Origination of beings from metaphysical faculty of the Lord. Close attention is needed to understand this shloka. Normally, beings are considered to be physical in nature, and their origination from some metaphysical faculty is regarded as somewhat incongruous. This is due to the sense of tangibility associated with the grossness of physical entities and to the assumption that what is perceptible to the senses is also real. But a little deep thinking would reveal that what the senses perceive is in fact made up of several subtle entities and what and it is the subtle entities which have a real existence. Again, the difference in subtle and gross is not one of material, nor it is subtle something different from gross. Both represent two aspects of the same thing. For example, vapor, water, and ice are materially the same, but they represent progressively grosser aspect of the same material. Similarly, it is the subtle which, on being experienced by the senses, is regarded as gross. The gross entities keep on changing with time, but their originator, the subtle, continues unchanged. By concentrated contemplation of this principle, it becomes clear how to unmanifest reality, which is one, becomes manifest in the shape of many. In this shloka, this point has been emphasized when the Lord says that all beings originate from his metaphysical faculty. Explaining this idea, the Lord speaks in the first line about Maharshis, the four preceding them, and Manus. The Maharshis are 7 in number and are Marichi, Angira, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Vashishta. They are pictured as having physical forms, but as explained above, in their subtle forms, they are deemed to be propounders of what is known as the path of pravritti of human beings. The underlying principle of this path is action in respect of performance of duties for fulfilling the objects of the four ashramas of life. Example, brahmacharya or student life, grihastha or the householder's life, vanaprastya or the forest dweller's life, and sannyasa or the life of a renouncer. The performance of rituals connected with worship, yajnas, charities, austerities, and activities of daily life, assiduously and dedicatedly for realization of the self, is called the path of pravritti.
So this is the path of action, the path of karma yogis. Okay. So these 7 Maharshis that have been defined here, these are represented by the 5 senses and ego and intellect. Sorry, I had said mind and intellect first. It is ego and intellect. Okay. So ego, intellect plus your 5 senses represent each of these 5 Maharshis. And they propound the path of pravritti, the path of action, right? And then we will talk about the next one. Before any action, every action has to start with Tyag, right? Bhagwanji is the ultimate role model. Everything that he expects us to do, he first shows us how to do it, right? He is the leader who leads from the front. So he has done his very first act of creating this world came from the space of Tyag, right? He said, I give up myself. Eko ham bahusyami. So he gave up his unity to create duality. And that was his first action of Tyag. So Tyag has to be start of every action, which means we have to give up something before we take something or we do something. So this path of pravritti, it has to, before this, there must be a path of nivritti, which we will talk about next. Let's read that.
The four preceding ones are named Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanata, and Sanat Kumara. The prefix Sana in the name of all these four is taken to denote comprehensive austerity or renunciation, which is the basis of the path propounded by them, which is called the path of Nivritti. In their subtle forms, they are taken to embody the knowledge of the four Vedas.
So they represent the path of nivritti. They will teach us the knowledge, they'll give us the knowledge of what we need to give up before we can take on or walk the path of pravritti properly. So what do we have to give up? We have to give up our attachments, we have to give up our ego, we have to give up hinsa, we have to give up anger, we have to give up attachment to the results from our actions, right? So these are the things that we need to give up. So path of nivritti comes before the path of pravritti. Patra hamara utna hi, right? We have the same this thing. For us to get something inside of it, we have to first empty it out. Okay, that's why the four Sanat Kumars come before. So jnana of what we need to leave. Once you leave, you create space in your life, and then you fill it up with the Karma Yoga path. You fill it up with the right principles. So give up first.
In each cycle, there are 14 manus. They represent the contemplative aspects, which lay down the principles of yajnas and rituals for the purpose of realization of the self, as has been explained in shloka 1 of chapter 4. It is in
So Manu basically, as I said, represents Man, right? So it is that entity that represents our ability to do Chintan, Manan, and our ability to be inspired to worship. Very, very unique quality of human beings. Now, Man is very, very powerful. And we've talked about this before as well. The whole concept of control of mind is a very diluted aspect. You cannot control mind. It is the most powerful tool we have. It is the only tool. Your intellect cannot reach where your mind can reach. So your job is not to control the mind. Your job is to direct the mind, right? And mind is the only amazing tool that will allow you to get past the limitations of the three gunas of this nature, which will allow you to make that leap from the three gunas to the nirgun state, which will allow you to really understand who really he is. Man is that tool, the most powerful tool that is out there. We just need to use our intellect to direct it appropriately. वो कहीं ना कहीं पकड़ के कुछ रखेगा. आप you directed it to संसार, then it will capture संसार. Direct it to Lord, it will capture Lord, and then it will hold on to it very tightly. So be very careful of what we put inside our mind, what we read, what we eat, what we think, what we listen to, who we spend time with. These are very, very important decisions we take every single day. And if we are not conscious about it, then we are not conscious about how we are using this powerful tool and what are we directing it towards. Mind is not just very powerful, it is very impressionable, very impressionable. So if you will spend more time in a good satsang, it will, get imprinted with the right principles. But the same thing, you put it in the wrong place, you end up like, just spending that time in tamoguni activities, like, just over the top watching TV or like being on the social media. You will become fully agitated and your mind will become your own enemy.
It is in this manner that in this shloka, the Lord speaks of all these entities as coming forth from his metaphysical faculty and says that all beings originate from them.
In middle the lesson, there's a very small. We'll close the chapter here. Any questions?
Okay, so we can do closure shlokas.
We
we can
do
all
it
do it
together.
together.
Huh? Yes.
Om Sarvesham Swastirvavatu Sarvesham
Shantirvavatu sarvesham, Sukham bhavatu sarvesham, Mangalam bhavatu. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, Sarve santu nirabhayah, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu, Ma kaschid dukha bhavet. Om Asato Ma Sarvagya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgaya Mrityo Ma Amritamgaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Prapada Achate Bharatiya Purnadeva Shishyate.
Narayan, everybody online, we're going to miss you for the prasad that follows.
Narayan, good to see everybody together. Missing you all.
Yes.
See everyone. Everyone's here. Everyone's here.
So Naina, what time is it for you right now?
Sorry.
Unmute.
Started at 4:30. It's 6 now.
Oh wow. Okay, Cyprus. Your commitment, different level, my naman to you.
Yeah, thank you for the inspiration.
Very
Beautiful.
cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Carry on. Yes. Bye.
Narayan, Narayan.
Narayan. Bye-bye.
Hi, Narayan. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Narayan,
Rita. Narayan, Narayan.